Live from the LPAC in Lincoln, for the first time, BBC Radio Lincolnshire, the Lincolnite and Lincolnshire Echo bring you the Elections 2015 Lincoln Debates. And tonight's hosts, Nicola Gilroy and Melvin Pryor.
Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the LPAC in Lincoln for the Lincoln constituency debate tonight, live on BBC Radio Lincolnshire and, of course, in partnership with the Lincolnshire Echo and the Lincolnite as well. We have an audience in the auditorium with us tonight that have been balanced and selected from applications that have come in to BBC Radio Lincolnshire, to the Lincolnite and also to the Echo as well. And we thank them for being here with us on this very nice evening. I'm going to introduce the candidates to you first of all. What's happened is we've drawn lots backstage to decide where the candidates will sit on the stage, and also that'll be part of the order that you will hear them speaking tonight. So first of all, will you welcome Nick Smith for UKIP, Lucy Rigby for Labour, Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents, Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats, and Elaine Smith for TUS, the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition. And joining me for the programme, Nicola Gilroy is going to be out and about in the audience. Nicola, we've got a lively audience here already.
Yes, we have. Yes, I'm going to be in charge of crowd control. So if you want to get your voice heard, then stick your hand up and I will come as quick as my little legs will carry me and my heels will permit as well. Getting your comments, gauging your reaction from what the candidates are saying here tonight, and of course, listeners, because we are broadcasting live on BBC Radio Lincolnshire and being streamed on the Lincolnite and the Lincolnshire Echo website. So if you are at home, you can get in touch tweeting with the hashtag Lincoln Debate. You can text 81333, start your message with the letters LN, or you can call on 01522 511 219. Just a note, if you are listening to Tuesday's edition of this programme, we can't naturally respond to any of your comments. Melvin.
Also, a mention that just one candidate not able to be with us tonight, Carl McCartney for the Conservatives, has declined our invitation to take part in the debate, but for details of his policies, you can go to carlmccartney.co.uk. To start the evening off, we're going to have a minute of an opening statement from each of our candidates, and we start with Nick Smith for UKIP.
Thank you very much, Melvin. Well, this is the big election. This is democracy. This is going to be your chance to change direction in Lincoln if you want to. Don't think that you've always got to do what you did in the past with the old two parties. We've been doing that for years, and I'm not saying I can't really say that we've achieved a great deal in Lincoln because we've just kept on that vein. This is your chance to believe in Britain and to change the big direction. It's not just about Lincoln, it's about much more than Lincoln. The whole country rides on this, and we do need to sort out our future, and if you carry on the way we're going, I think we're going to be in trouble long term. We've got some big issues in this country and in Lincoln, and I don't think that the old parties have got the answer. Thank you very much.
That was Nick Smith for UKIP. And next, Lucy Rigby for Labour.
Thanks, Melvin. It's really, really good to have this opportunity to discuss the issues facing our city here tonight, and the better, the more prosperous future that I believe we all have. And of course to debate all of those issues with some of the candidates who are seeking your vote on Thursday. Now, I've been in this role as a candidate for more than 3 years now. Over that time, I've done what I consider to be absolutely essential if you want to represent residents in our city, and that is going out there and meeting with tens of thousands of people, talking every single week to people about what they want to see for our city, what they want to see for the country, what people want to see change. And on that basis, I'm standing for 5 main areas. That's better NHS services, Lincoln's fair share of investment, boosting our local economy, action on living standards, and a far better transport deal.
Lucy Rigby for Labour. Next, we have Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Powell. I have 2 grown-up daughters, one married with a grandson. I'm very honoured to be here tonight, standing for election as your Lincoln MP for the next 5 years. I am a Lincolnshire Independent, a county councillor under Westminster board member for children and young people. I've won every seat through hard work, integrity and being available. I love the work I do and I love the challenge. As a Lincoln Independent, we sign up to always putting the public first in our own areas. We are nationally trained via a network of knowledge and experience. I was drawn into politics after I came back to care for my elderly mum who developed Alzheimer's. I started my own business, window cleaning, but I'm trained in dress design, pattern cutting, merchandising and customer sales. I got involved locally to sort out a very important issue that wasn't being addressed and became a councillor 8 years ago. Thank you.
Helen Powell for Lincolnshire Independents. Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Melvin. I think we all know by now that no one will win the election outright this Thursday. So, using your vote this Thursday will mean choosing a representative for Lincoln. Lincoln is our great, wonderful city, but it has been neglected and let down by Labour for many, many years. Lincoln has many issues that needs addressing, such as our housing issues, our transport issues, and also we need to get our profile up in the country. Liberal Democrats can help do that, but we can also deliver a lot more. We're promised £8 billion for the NHS. We have promised to build 100,000 new homes each year over the next Parliament. And we're also going to give you more money back in your pockets through a further tax cut. I will serve this city because I am passionate and a passionate resident for this city. Vote for a Liberal Democrat means a better future for Lincoln.
And Elaine Smith for Tusk, the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition.
Britain's richest people increased their wealth by 28 billion last year, whilst the living standards of the rest of us are squeezed. The median wage has fallen by 3,200 since 2009. Young people are around 20% worse off today than they were then, and 250,000 more children live in poverty today than when the Tories were last in power in the 90s. Benefit cuts and the bedroom tax have left the poorest in society in desperate poverty. A profound anger is developing at the meagre future that capitalism is offering. And while here in the UK, us mere mortals have seen our pay and savings shrink to next to nothing since the 2008 capitalist recession, the latest tally of the UK's richest 1,000 individuals and their families reveal a combined wealth of £547 billion.
Elaine, I must stop you there. You've had your minute. Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, your candidates this evening. The format for the evening will be that we will have a question from the floor. Each of the candidates will have a minute to respond to that question, uninterrupted, and then we open it to debate amongst the various candidates and from the floor as well. Our first question tonight comes from Eamon Moore. Is Eamon in the audience, Nicola?
Hi, panel. What would you do to improve the transport situation in the county in relation to roads, rail and other forms of public transport?
Okay, transport. What would you do to improve the transport situation in the county in relation to roads, rail and other forms of transport? We'll start that one with Lucy Rigby for Labour.
Hi, Eamon. It's, well, as I said at the start, transport is one of my main campaigning priorities. The reason for that is because it's what people talk to me about, well, every day, actually, usually multiple times every day. The transport deal that we have here in Lincoln is really, really poor. And it's poor in terms of our roads, our rail, our cycle routes, it's poor across the board. People are fed up with being stuck in traffic jams for far too long. They're fed up with the level crossings. They're fed up with our rail links to neighbouring cities. So there's a whole host of things I want to do. And I've been campaigning over the last 3 years on each of those things. So we need, I think, far better links with our neighbouring cities on rail. We need better links to Doncaster, to Sheffield, to Scunthorpe, to Nottingham. You know, we also need better links to London as well. Now, we've got these more direct trains supposedly coming in 2019. I want to see those far, far sooner, because that is absolutely key to boosting our local economy, boosting our tourism, boosting our jobs, boosting our investment. Melvin, you're telling me to stop, are you?
I am indeed. Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents, improving transport links and the situation here in the county and possibly specifically in Lincoln as well.
Thank you. I feel very, very strongly that the base, the framework of anything, even designing clothes, you have to start off with a sound base. You have to start off with a framework that's going to be fit for purpose. We need the dualling of roads. We have to have the capacity to take all the traffic that's actually sometimes now getting out of Lincoln at night. It's just absolutely a nightmare. And because those places and those roads, rather, weren't in place, it's just got to a level now where everything actually coming to a standstill, and that isn't doing the economy of the town any good, and it doesn't do the people who work in town any good. With regard to the rail, we obviously need direct routes down to London. Lincoln was the second most important city in England. In the Roman times, it was most important. And it's such a shame that people from London can't make a direct train trip up here for the day or a couple of days and increase our economy, the tourism. Tourism's worth about 1.5 billion, I think, just in Lincolnshire alone. So thank you.
Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats, transport links, how would you improve them?
Well, I think one of the first things we need to get in place is the Lincoln bypass. It's long overdue, and I think that's one of the things we all agree on. It needs to be done ASAP, because that will relieve the traffic congestion within the city and also reduce the air pollution, which is a significant problem in some parts of the city. We've talked about rail links to London, but we also need to talk about rail links to other parts. We need to go north to places like Leeds, York. We can't just look south all the time. There are lots of students here who would come from other parts of the country. We need to actually have a look about getting other people here, not just from London. And also tackle in public transport, especially to our rural communities such as Scunthorpe, Bracebridge Heath, especially in the evenings and at weekends, which is a nightmare for people to be able to commute in and out of the city, and also early mornings trying to get to and from work. So I think those are the problems that need to be addressed as soon as possible when the election's over.
Let me go back to Eamon in the audience. Is this the sort of thing you're wanting to hear, Eamon? Are we covering the sort of aspects and areas?
Yes, but I'm a little bit concerned that none of the panel have linked the transport problems into the fact that they're all looking to build new homes as well, because surely that will only make the transport problems worse.
Interesting. Let's go to Elaine Smith for Tusk, Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition.
Yes, I must admit that I've changed my mind in relation to the bypass. I was sort of questioning whether we ought to go ahead, and the public did put to me a very strong argument in relation to the facilities for cycling and more pedestrianisation. But as far as transport generally, I feel that certainly the railways ought to be renationalised, and the fact that Stagecoach made £120 million last year and we can't get a bus after, 5:45 at night to go home if you live in Bracebridge Heath is a disgrace. So I feel that there ought to be a stronger investment in transport, and as far as the infrastructure, when homes are built, obviously roads have to be a consideration, and the links. I think that a park and ride situation is very good, and I think there ought to be more links to other cities, as I said previously, Nottingham, Sheffield and other places, not just London but to the north.
Elaine, thank you. Nick Smith for UKIP.
Hi, yeah, just to bring up that point of the park and ride. The park and ride's only temporary for 1 year, so that's not a permanent thing. One of the things we could look at is, of course, instead of building homes on the Swampole, we could put the park and ride there. And if it flooded, it wouldn't be the end of the world. That's one answer to that area. But also, the biggest and most important thing is roads. Because roads, if you don't have the right road infrastructure, you won't get the bigger companies that will come to Lincoln and build factories, which will give you the bigger amounts of jobs. Everything we need, the bypass does need to be dual carriageway, otherwise we're going to be coming back to it later and spending an absolute fortune making it into dual carriageway. We really need to finish off the rest of the bypass as well on the western side and dual that as well, so it's one big link. But going further ahead, the A15 north out of Lincoln towards Scunthorpe, a lot of trucks use that going up to Immingham. That does need to be dual carriageway, because if we don't get that dualed, there's a lot of people get killed on that road, as you know. I'm sure you've reported lots of deaths and accidents on that road. That's key, because the freight comes off the A1 and it comes up the 46, round Lincoln, and then up the A15 towards Immingham.
Let's go back to Eamon in the audience. What would you like to say now you've heard the statements from our candidates?
I'm still concerned about the fact that they haven't linked it into their desire to build new homes, and then the then greater need for facilities such as new schools. For me, it's all joined in together, so I would like to hear them answer in a way that links all three of those aspects.
But I think in fairness that we're talking transport on this specific question here, so sort of coming into all of that as well. So we need an infrastructure that's going to be able to cope with an influx of people. Basically, you're saying if we build more houses, we need to be able to get round the city, in some cases bypass the city as well. And I suppose it gives us a chance to talk a bit about the Eastern Bypass. Let me throw that question, if I may, to Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents. How do you see something like the Eastern Bypass developing?
Well, it's essential, and also of any of the major cities in the town, and I worked as a merchandiser over 3 counties at one point, and they all have to be in a basic setup to work properly. You have to have a road round the whole of the outside, and then you have access points for the lorries or wherever they need to deliver, just to come in and out at the same place where they need to go in and come out. So you alleviate all the heavy traffic in the towns. It's just then for shoppers, people that work in the city, and tourism, obviously. But you have to have that as a setup, and all the industry should be in the east, because of the southwest winds. They take away all the fumes and everything else. And 99.9% of the towns have got the industry in the east where it should be. And where they haven't, they have massive health problems. The diesel in particular, as you know, I know in London there's 8,000 people die every year from the pollution in London alone. So we need to get a framework set in place and thought about, not just ad-libbed and ad hoc, add bits here and there.
Let's
Thanks.
throw transport out to the audience in the auditorium here at the LPAC. Stick your hand up if you've got any comments on transport. Several comments coming through on this one. Of course, if Carl McCartney, the candidate, was here tonight, he'd be telling us how he'd secured funding for the Eastern Bypass. So certainly transport is an area that he's keen to talk about, but not able to be with us tonight. Nicola.
Hello, would you like to tell me your name and what your comment is?
Victoria Banks-Price. I'd just like to know the candidate's view on a national plan for England and how that would link up with infrastructure, and particularly transport.
OK, national plan then. So we're talking here. Let's go to Lucy Rigby then for Labour.
Yeah, Victoria, we do need a national plan for transport. In fact, we need a national plan for infrastructure as a whole. And one of the things that Labour are going to bring in if we form a government from Thursday is this National Infrastructure Commission, and that actually will deal with things that Eamon's talking about in terms of pressures on different areas of the country, and kind of to try and decide where we need new bits of infrastructure. But also to go back to the point Eamon's making, Eamon, I think our transport infrastructure is creaking at the moment, even without new homes and growth. So, you add in that growth, well, yeah, of course we need to invest, and all growth in our city has got to be sustainable. So, yeah, look, I
would
totally
you welcome
agree with you.
Park and Ride for Lincoln?
I would, yeah. This is something I'm doing a lot of campaigning on. I mean, Lincoln's population doubles during the day. The number of people that we've got coming in. So I think, it's greener, it's much more sustainable. Other cities like Lincoln, Exeter, York, they have park and ride schemes. So, yeah, I think we need it.
Let's go back to the audience. Nicola, another question in the audience. Stick your hand up if you want to question on transport, just down the front here.
Hi, if you tell me your name.
Stephen Killick.
And what's your comment?
I would like to say, if elected to Lincoln, will you be campaigning and lobbying for a better Sunday train service, especially to Nottingham and Sheffield.
Sunday train services,
the
yeah.
first train is 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
This is one of these situations where people have phoned me on the radio and said that if you catch a train from Lincoln to Nottingham, I think you don't get into Nottingham till 3 o'clock on a Sunday, and the shops will shut at 4. So you've got an hour to scrab around and do your shopping. Let me throw that one at Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats. Ross.
I completely agree. Like I was saying, transport on weekends in this area is generally appalling, especially out into the rural areas. It's something that needs to be addressed. It should have been addressed a lot sooner. And with all the extra trains coming to and from Lincoln and Nottingham at the moment, there should have been more provision for a Sunday service in there, but not just to Nottingham, but to London and other places as well. It is appalling. It needs to be rectified ASAP.
Elaine Smith for Tusk, just a comment on train services.
Yes, most definitely. I would be campaigning for better train services on Sunday and for every day. I think it should be down to more to need than to the individual companies that run the different transports. Because as I said before, I think it should be renationalised and it should be run according to need, and Sunday is definitely a need now for people to be travelling places.
Let's move on to our next question. You're listening to the Big Lincoln Debate, BBC Radio Lincolnshire, in partnership with the Lincolnshire Echo and the Lincolnite. 5 of the 6 candidates are with me here on stage at the LPAC. One candidate, Carl McCartney for the Conservatives, has declined our invitation to take part, but if you'd like details of his policies, you can go to carlmccartney.co.uk. Our second question is from Sally Keane. Is Sally Keane in the audience? She is. At the front, Nicola.
Hello, panel. With Lincoln being one of the areas in the UK with the lowest number of doctors and nurses per capita, how would you help the local NHS recruit more doctors and nurses to the area?
Recruiting of more doctors and nurses to the area, and I suppose retaining them as well, because we have had in the past where doctors and nurses have come to our area and then they've been here for a while and decided to go somewhere differently. Let's start that one with Helen Powell from the Lincolnshire Independent. Helen.
Thank you. I totally agree with you. I sympathise very much, and I know how short we are of consultants in the area, and I know how many we should have, and I know how many we have. And we have only just come out of special measures. It's a very, very important thing that the health of absolutely everyone, to me, it's worth more than money. If I haven't got my health, I haven't got anything. So I do try to keep healthy, eat healthy, and exercise and everything else. But for the people that can't do anything about that and have to go in for operations or whatever, they have to have that care in place. And the recruiting of these doctors, I know they're saying it's difficult to keep them, and I don't know why they just don't go back to how the police force used to be run. All the senior officers in the police force used to have a house in that area, so they didn't have to sell their family home where they've settled and got a life. They'd come up and do the work, and then that house would go on to the next person. I can't imagine why that hasn't been done, because they wouldn't have to give up their own family home then, and they would actually come and work here without any pressure.
Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats. How do we encourage more people to come and work for the NHS in Lincolnshire?
Well, I think health is the biggest issue that we have. We need to make sure our NHS is sustainable and is funded well. But locally, I would like to see the introduction of a local medical school so we can actually train the doctors locally, and that would help retention within the area. And I think that's one of the things we need desperately. But also, we need to make sure that the NHS is actually funded properly, and that's why the Liberal Democrats have committed £8 billion of funding over the next 5 years, and from all the parties here, we're the only ones that actually to have committed to that. With that, obviously, because at the moment, a lot of the staff that's in the NHS in Lincolnshire are often locums, and that means their bills are so much higher than everywhere else. And I think we need to look at recruiting locally and making sure that, obviously, this medical school is up and running as soon as possible.
Elaine Smith for Tusk.
Yes. When I started my introduction, I was going to say, and yet the sort of pro-austerity parties try to tell us that there is no money. there is money and we need to put it into services like the NHS. There should not be a shortage of doctors. And doctors and, well, particularly nurses, their pay cuts and freezes need to be reversed. We need to take away money that is being siphoned off to the sort of private, in relation to privatisation of the NHS, and put it back into staff and put it back into valuing staff and making them feel that they're doing a good job like they are. As everybody said, our health is very important and the money is there. PFI alone is just causing our health service billions and billions, it's costing our health service billions and billions of pounds. That money should be put into staff training and it should, as I say, it should allow for staff to feel valued, to be better trained and to be respected.
Elaine, thank you. Sally Keane, you asked the question. We've heard from 3 of the candidates so far. Your initial reaction?
I think a lot of the policies are very interesting, but the issues are now, and a lot of the solutions you've got are looking for sort of 10 years hence if you're thinking of training new doctors in the area.
Do you actually work in the NHS?
I do. I'm a GP locally. And I just wonder if there's anybody with any ideas or that's a bit more prominent or a bit quicker to
Let's go to our final 2 candidates to comment on this before we open it up for general debate. Then Nick Smith for UKIP. How do we encourage more staff to come and work for the NHS here in Lincolnshire?
I think it's a big problem, but it's a big problem nationally holding on to our trained doctors. What we've got to do is think about not just money. Obviously, UKIP's going to put 12 billion into the NHS. That's more money. That's great. We're going to recruit to 8,000 more GPs. That's fantastic. But you've got to get them to the right places. I think we're missing a trick here nationally. It is called the NHS. The S bit is called service. Now, if you want to have the right people in the right place, the way the army does it is they post them. Now, when you get posted somewhere, if you're on a proper contract and you were given a 5 or an 8 year contract when you became a doctor or a nurse, and you were given your posting, and you were needed in Lincolnshire, then you became a GP in Lincolnshire. That is the only way you're ever going to solve this problem, because if you're going to just advertise and nobody applies, you're stuffed. People need it now. So you're going to have to go eventually to a proper service. It gives, the unions won't mind it, because it gives the staff and the doctors proper contracts, gives them some longevity of employment. The other thing, of course, is the government then knows how many staff it's got, what it's got, and where it needs them.
Nick
so you
Smith,
might
I'll
get
stop
post.
You there. Let's go to Lucy Rigby for Labour.
Sally, yeah, so huge problem, massive problem. I met up with a group of GPs a couple of weeks ago who were talking about exactly this and how we could solve it. The idea of a medical school, I agree with Ross on that. I think it's a great idea. We've got a new and a growing university, so let's try and push the idea of a medical school. But you're absolutely right. We need more nurses and more doctors now. Now, Labour has a fully costed plan to bring in 8,000 more GPs, 20,000 more nurses, but we've also said, let's talk to the Royal College of Nursing about how we, well, first of all, increase massively the number of training places for medical staff ASAP, but also try and encourage people who've left the professions back, which obviously is more immediate. So there's a whole range of things that we need to be doing, but the health service is the number one thing that people talk to me about. So huge issue.
Let me come back to Sally on this. When you talk to other GPs, why do other GPs not want to stay in Lincolnshire? Why do they leave? Why do they not want to come and work here?
I think there's a lot of different reasons. A lot of GPs have other doctors as spouses, and so they don't necessarily have a job or want to work in the same area. I think we've trained a lot of overseas doctors in our area. Certainly in our practice, we've trained overseas doctors, and they've come to Lincoln for a while, but not settled in Lincoln. It's not
Is it that we don't pay enough?
No, it's not pay. It is very much the way of life in Lincoln, I think, that doesn't sort of attract people who are used to living in big cities or
we're not exciting enough.
More culture or things like that.
Well, it is,
yeah,
isn't it?
It is growing.
There must be some reason why people don't want to come and work here, because a GP can earn a very good salary.
I think the state of the hospital as well, and how it is, and the fact that GPs train in the hospital as well as in general practice doesn't attract people into Lincoln at the moment. And I think the hospital has to be, state of the hospital has to be improved.
Let's get some reaction from the audience as well on this one. We're talking about the NHS. Several hands are going up here,
Melvin,
Nicola.
can I just ask Sally, because I'd be interested to know, and I bet quite a few people in the audience would be, about the idea of being posted.
They do that in Australia, and I think if it was for a set time, for 2 or 3 years, when you first trained, when you've not set down routes and things, that would be fine. Yeah.
Candidates, would we agree? We're general debate here now. A posting of staff on the NHS, would you agree or not?
Well, I think another, it's a related idea actually that's quite interesting is, so sometimes the taxpayer contributes to paying for the training of NHS staff, and very often they leave afterwards. So one of the things, I mean, when I trained to be a solicitor, I had to do a couple of years with the firm that helped me pay for my training. So, you know, it's a related idea. I wonder if we could do something like that.
Comments on that?
Yeah, definitely.
I think if it's in the early years, before you put down routes, like you said, I think that would probably be a better idea, because you can actually keep them in the area that they train. For example, Lincoln, if we had the medical school, and then obviously then they can decide what they want to do in the future.
Nicola in the audience.
We've got any NHS specifically? Yeah? Sharon. What's your name, sir?
Kieran Sharrock.
And what's your comment?
It amazes me that the parties say they can get between 5,000 and 8,000 GPs overnight. We've already alluded to the fact that it takes 10 years to train a doctor from going into medical school to becoming a GP. So my point is that I think we really need to prevent people leaving the professions. The constant denigration of the GPs, constant increasing in workload coming from hospitals into general practice. The BMA recently published a survey which showed that GPs are under so much pressure that 50% of Lincolnshire GPs are currently thinking of either leaving the country or retiring early. So it's what will the candidates do to stop people leaving the profession, make the profession of general practice still appear attractive, not just in Lincolnshire, but throughout the whole country.
Can I combine that with another question as well, if I may? And I'm interested in your comments on this. 24-hour GP surgeries, would you agree with that, or is that going to put more pressure on the GPs?
If you want people to leave the profession and go to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, bring in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, let's go to Nick Smith on that one. Nick Smith. How do we go about doing this, getting the GPs and the doctors in the hospitals to stay?
Yeah, well, you can't force them to stay. That's the first point. You know, we're not in a draconian state. These people do this job because they want to do it, because they care about people. One of the things that they've got is pressure. As our population keeps exploding through immigration, we will have pressures. I know you don't like the I word, my guys and gals, but it's true, it's a reality. It's coming to a town near you, okay? And I'm afraid whatever you think, if you keep piling on the people and you don't increase the doctors, to cope with it, you are going to have serious problems. Each doctor is turning away people and getting people off their lists because they can't cope. Now, you can't just say, it's not happening, it's not happening. It is happening. It's happening here. Well, it isn't. You just said it's in crisis. Did you? Oh, I can see we've got a loaded audience. Right.
Let me bring Elaine Smith in here.
There's more to the NHS than they take out.
Yes, they're very good, very good. Look, we all accept the NHS is fantastic, but it is under incredible strain. And it's not going to be helped by bringing more customers in, is it? What we need to do is...
Staff, doctors and medical staff do the job that
they do fantastic job. We know, hey, Elaine,
want to be accountant.
Nobody's asking them to. No, hey, nobody is saying. Nobody's saying that. They're doing a fantastic job, but you're piling on the pressure. If you want people to stay, it's no use to saying, well, have an extra 2 million people over the next few years. That's what we've had. Since 1997, we've had 9 million people extra in this country. Has the NHS staff increased exponentially?
Let me hold it there if we may. Elaine. Just hold it there for a second. Helen Powell,
Thank you.
comment on the NHS.
Thank you very much. As I said before, I feel very, very passionately about this. The privatisation by stealth of the health force was the same as the police force. Bit by bit, they were taking away the funding. In Lincolnshire, we are funded per head £487. In the south of the country, each person is funded £1,300 and more. So if you keep taking away the funding for our services, all it adds to is the pressure of all those professionals that absolutely love their job, and they are being abused and taken for granted by the powers that be because they know that that's what they want to do with their lives.
Because they're dedicated to what they do. Let me bring in Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats, and then we'll go to some Twitter comments that have been coming in.
I think one thing is the constant downgrading the NHS, saying it's in crisis and everything like that. We need to support our NHS. We need to support the staff who work there, and that's one of the biggest things we all need to pull together as a country and do.
Nicola, Twitter comment, I think, coming in.
Yes, I just thought I'll have a couple from the audience and then go to the Twitter. So, hello.
Hello, I'm Janet Hutchinson. I'm 55. I've got an elderly mother in Lincolnshire who's 86. I have a daughter who's under the NHS at the moment. I have a sister who works in the NHS. There is a huge elephant in the room about the NHS, and I'd like to ask the parties what they want to do about it. Staff is not the only problem. We can now spend money on so many things that we could bankrupt the NHS very, very quickly. When are the parties going to start asking difficult questions about who should actually get treated all the time, and whether we continue to prolong life at huge cost to the NHS and at very little gain to some individuals, both at the beginning and end of life?
Well,
I think that's a huge elephant in the room.
Let me pick up on some of those points that you make there. Lucy Rigby for Labour then. So are we going to have to make some tough decisions as to who lives and who dies?
Well, the short answer is no. I really hope that we don't have to. I mean, if your point, was it Diana? Janet, sorry. If your point is that the NHS is costing us an increasing amount of money, and we need to make sure we fund it adequately and continue to fund it adequately year on year, then yes, I totally agree with you.
That they want to do and can do. We have to take hard decisions.
But who are you suggesting that we shouldn't treat?
I don't have the medical knowledge to make those decisions because I don't know the cost effectiveness, but I do know that those decisions need to be discussed by doctors, nurses, medical profession, families, and we have to stop thinking everybody can have exactly what they want out of the NHS because there aren't the resources to do it. We have an ageing population and we have a rising number of people with very complex medical needs.
Nicola, let's go to more comments. There's a lot of hands up in the audience for this one on the NHS. Let's get some more comments. Oh, lovely.
Right, shall I come over here?
Hello, my name's Jared. I just wanted to say the East Midlands Ambulance Service really isn't performing to the level that it should be, and it's letting everybody in this room down. I'm a student at the university, but I'm from Newark, so I'm not far away. And I know a story of an elderly lady that was lying on the side of a road for several hours waiting for an ambulance, and that's just not good enough. I wanted to know who, if you are elected, is going to go into Parliament and sort this mess out with the East Midlands Ambulance Service.
Let's put that first of all then to Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats. So this is all part and parcel of the same thing, isn't it? So the ambulance service there to get out and respond. How do we improve that?
Well, I think one thing that was the biggest failure is taking it out of Lincolnshire's hands, and I think that's one thing we need to bring it back is the ambulance service for Lincolnshire.
But we can't afford to do that, can we?
Well,
is it more cost effective to bring it back to Lincolnshire or to have a shared facility?
Well, you can share resources, but you don't have to have it necessarily run from one central control room. You need to have a look and make sure that the resources and closing of ambulance stations that there has been is actually reversed, because it's not doing anyone any good in this county. There's been several cases like you mentioned. I've had recent experience in my own family of situations where people have been left on the roadside after an accident. So I think this is something that needs sorting. But just coming back to the point that was made about life or death treatment, no, you shouldn't really make the decision. The problem we have is, yes, we have an aging population, But the ageing population shouldn't have come as a surprise to the politicians over decades beforehand. One thing that I would like to see is us actually join together, come up with a plan, work with the medical professions, and find a proper strategy to make sure the NHS is properly funded over the next 50 years.
I'd like to get a bit more reaction from the audience if we can, Nicola.
I do just have a comment on Twitter. If there is enough money to give in foreign aid and around the EU, surely we must have some spare cash, Melvin. That's just
For the
on
NHS,
Twitter.
do we think? Would they direct it to the NHS? We'll have to see.
Perhaps.
Just more questions from the audience or more comments from the audience, I think, Nicola?
I think you've had your hand up for a while. What's your name and what's your comment?
It's Karen James, and I wanted to talk about the provision within the NHS. It isn't just GPs, nurses or doctors we're short of. It's physiotherapists, OTs and everything for our children as well. The lady sitting beside me, we've both got children with special needs, and I've got some figures here on physio provision, and I'd be interested to know your comments. 45% of children are receiving fewer than 10 hours of NHS physio a year. 43% of families say that their child is receiving a lot less therapy now compared with 5 years ago. And 39% of families say that the service has fallen far short of their expectations, and a further 33% say that it has not met expectations. This comes from a survey from parents of children with special needs across the whole country.
Let me put some of those points, if I may, then. Let me throw some of them, first of all, to Elaine Smith for the Trade Unionist Socialist Coalition, TUSC. So we've got a situation here where it's not just the GPs, it's not just the consultants. This is people doing physiotherapy, all sorts of specialist jobs within the NHS, a shortage of those people as well.
Yeah, well, there's just been a total lack of funding, hasn't there? It's all right talking about 8 billion over the next 5 years. It needs more than 8 billion now.
But where does that money come from?
It could be obtained from...
Where does the money come from?
Stopping, as I said, PFI, which is cost already 2/3 more than the actual debt, original debt. There's lots of facilities being privatised, and when anything's privatised, there's profit siphoned off. The money is there to protect our NHS. It needs to go back to where it started, to be a public service to support the best healthcare that the public needs, and that includes OTs, physios, and alongside the health, we need better social care, because we all know that caused a lot of the increase in A&E admissions. And as far as the ambulance services are struggling all over, because once again, they've had massive cuts. And what do the government do? They penalise them financially for not meeting the targets. So we need to take away targets and leave people to fund the service adequately and leave people to do the job.
Nicola, we'll have one more comment on the NHS from the audience, and then we'll move on to another question.
So who's commenting on the NHS? Yeah, Charles. Yeah. What's your name and what's your comment?
My name is Liz Cornwall. Last month, the heads of the health trusts awarded themselves £35,000 pay rise, more than a nurse gets in a year. So now we know why retention is not upheld. What on earth are you going to do about that?
Comments coming in. Nicola, of course, if people can't get through to us this evening, they can leave comments on social media as well, can't they, of course? And I'm sure the debate is currently raging on Facebook as we speak.
Yes, if you are listening at home and you are eager to have your comments heard, then you can get in touch. You can tweet with the hashtag Lincoln Debate. You can text 81333. Start your text with the letters LN. Give us a call as well at BBC Radio Lincolnshire 01522 511 219. This is being broadcast live on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. It's also streamed on the Lincolnite and the Lincolnshire Echo websites as well. Shall we have another comment on NHS? Oh, we've got somebody who is... Yeah, stretching rather a lot. Hello, what's your name? What's your comment?
My name's Karen Owers, and my comment is the National Health Service needs money now. Now. It needs money where there's need, not greed.
Are you referring to perhaps the pay rises that we heard from the lady over there?
All of it, yes. And I have a question. Why has it been alleged to continue to protect the NHS with more money when trusts in our area have been instructed to save millions, 30 million, during this new financial year? And why have you failed to report the outcome of the Lord Rose report? Does this mean criticism of top management and suggest more privatisation of the NHS?
Let's put that quickly round the panel, and then we'll go on to another question. Nick Smith for UKIP. I mean, how do we fund the NHS? The lady here has just said, look, we need money now.
Yeah, look, you know, we can... If you go back to the start, it was 142 million an Aaron Bevan put aside for the NHS in 1 year. By the end of that first year, they'd spent 432 million. This is not a new problem. This has been going on since time immemorial. In 1952, they had to introduce dental charges. They just were running out of money from the day we started. We have to add more money, yes, but if we don't clean up the operation and stop the management levels that we've got in there, these guys are taking on huge salaries, and they're showing themselves to be utterly incompetent.
Just want to do some final comments before we move to the next question. Lucy Rigby for Labour.
Yeah, I think, obviously, I totally agree with you. The NHS does need money now. That plan that I was talking about earlier to Sally for more nurses, more doctors, the plan from Labour is fully costed. So it will be paid for by a mansion tax on properties worth over £2 million, by clamping down on tax avoidance, and by putting a one-off tax on tobacco companies. But Liz's point about managers' pay, I totally agree with you. And, those kind of pay deals are unfortunately at the expense of the nurses, the staff on the ground who are, being denied their pay rises by Jeremy Hunt again and again and again. And that is absolutely disgusting. But look, the elephant in the room here, the thing, a few people have mentioned, this is all, this government wasted £3 billion on the reorganisation of the NHS, which they promised that they would not do.
We're going to move on. Helen Powell, just a final comment on the NHS before we move to our next question.
Thank you. Two things very quickly. I was very proud to care for my mum in her final years, and I do believe that the pensioners of this country that gave so much for us and paid into the National Health Service their whole lives deserve those operations. I also believe that we've far more than we really need. I don't believe in greed. I try to live very frugally myself, but I give plenty to other people. I just try to get a balance. And there's enough money in the world for everyone. We just need to get the people that are taking more out than they should be, and they know who they are. You'll probably excuse me for saying about the executive culture, but time and time again I've seen that work, and it is not in the best interest of the people they should be caring for. There's a lot of money wrapped up. The government won't let us look at the books. I would love to see how they've balanced the books. I'd love to see where the majority of the money's going. There is definitely enough money in the country to look after those in need.
This is the Big Lincoln debate on BBC Radio Lincolnshire in partnership with the Lincolnshire Echo and the Lincolnite. 5 of the 6 candidates are with me here on stage at the LPAC. One candidate, Carl McCartney for the Conservatives, has declined our invitation to take part in the debate. And for details of his policies, you can go to carlmccartney.co.uk. Our next question comes from the audience. Viet Hai Fung is in the audience. Nicola.
Just run down. Hello, this is your question.
Good evening, panel. Has there been a net benefit to the UK from migration?
Has there been a net benefit to the UK from migration? Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats to start this one.
Well, I think you can honestly say from the debate we've been having about the NHS that that's one area that has definitely benefited. you'll find that the debate is being skewed very, very heavily on those who are seeking benefits when not that many immigrants are actually getting benefits. And I think it's wrong. You need to actually differentiate between those who are here to work and those who are here to seek asylum and those who are trying to get here illegally. That's where you need to make the differentiation. You can't just put them all in one category like a lot of people are trying to do. I think that's one thing we need to clarify and make sure that we have a sensible debate over this subject. But also, if you are coming here for asylum, you need to be treated with respect and well. For example, LGBT asylum seekers are asking to prove that they are gay or bisexual or transgender to be able to stay in the country. And for me, that is completely wrong, and the country should be ashamed of itself for doing so.
Elaine Smith for TUS, the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition.
Sorry, what's that?
Sorry, Elaine Smith.
Yes, they've made a great contribution to the UK. I think, sadly, what's been happening is they've been the butt of scapegoating, really, because of the austerity, you know, the lack of funds and cuts that we've all experienced. They have, rather than put their hands up and say who's really responsible, they look to divide ordinary working people and say that it's because of immigration, when it's not. I only see immigration as being very beneficial, and they pay more in taxes than they take out in benefits. They are sort of exceptionally skilled and provide, as we said before, they've kept the NHS afloat. And I just think it's shameful when immigration is used as so divisory. I really do.
Nick Smith for UKIP, you have your minute uninterrupted.
A minute. Thank you.
Minute uninterrupted.
Right, well, migration can be a fantastic thing, and it's very important to our country. Some of the people that have come in to work for the NHS, fantastic. This is what we call skilled immigration. That's what it's called, skilled immigration. But we have had millions of unskilled immigration. And if you think I'm lying, go and have a look at your pay packets. If you work in an area which is semi-skilled or low-skilled, your wages have been compressed. Now, the minimum wage is the maximum wage. That's a fact. You can take that to the bank, okay? Now, we want good immigration in this country. Immigration is important, but it has to be controlled. You have to make sure you know who you're getting. It's no use just taking anybody. That's a recipe for madness.
Just a second, we'll come to this. This is an uninterrupted minute to start with.
I'm saying that wage compression has made the minimum wage the maximum wage, especially in Lincoln, and it's not good. We don't want that. We want the best for all our people, and we also want the best for the immigrants that are coming here. There's no point them arriving and then we don't have the facilities, the services, the houses, the school places. We want the best for everyone. So we have to be discerning. It's no use just saying, like Elaine says, everybody who wants to come here is welcome. They cannot be. No country in the world does that. Hang on.
We'll come to debate. We are out of the minute, I'm afraid, sir.
Anybody can come as
Lucy, hold on.
We will debate in a second. Lucy Rigby for Labour.
I feel like anyway. Yes, I think over the years, and indeed this is, migration to the UK has been happening for many, many years, there has been a net benefit, without a doubt. And I think it's really, really important. I want to echo Elaine here and Ross, that the debate that we have around immigration takes place in a sensible way and in a way that values the diversity that we have in this country, not in kind of an arms race on rhetoric, which, Nick, I'm really sorry, I'm not you personally necessarily, but UKIP candidates, unfortunately,
nobody wants to be held
around the
accountable,
country.
Though.
No, Nick, that's not the case. That's not the case.
I'm afraid under your lot,
that's
7
not the
million.
case.
Sorry, this is Lucy, free speech here at the minute for Lucy.
Well, and I would say, unfortunately, I think sometimes that debate about legitimate concerns that people have descends, and it descends in a way which I believe is really unhealthy for our city and for the country more
We'll
widely.
open it to the floor in a second. Let's quickly go back to our questioner, Viet Hai. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I agree with what Ross was saying about the need to distinguish between different types of migrants, because there's a tendency to lump everyone as the same, and you have to treat them differently. And the way to address Nick's point is to tackle exploitation of labour by setting a minimum wage and enforcing it so you don't distinguish between different types of workers.
Let's come to that in a second. Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents. Has there been a net benefit to the UK from migration?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the further south that you go, the more you see of that fact. For one thing, hospitals couldn't exist. If they all packed up and went home tomorrow, we just couldn't exist. I know there's a lot of people over on the East Coast. I think there's about 16,000 people working in the food industry over there. 16,000 unemployed people were offered those jobs and they didn't want to take them. So the power of the land that we have in Lincolnshire is the richest in the whole country, and some say the richest in Europe. It's grade 1, 2 and 3, double and triple cropping. That land is providing half of all the food the whole UK grows. There's 56,000 employees there, and the total contribution to the whole of the UK is £2.5 billion. So if we don't want to eat, you know, who's going to do it? They definitely make a big difference and a big benefit.
Let's go back to our questioner and then show of hands, get some hands up if you want to comment on migration. Back to questioner first, though.
Do you feel like migrants are scapegoated, as Nick said? As Elaine said?
To some extent, because the media portrays sees migrants as an easy target, really, to blame the ills of the country on them, because they're a vulnerable group who don't really have the capacity to answer back.
Who was the person that shouted out? I was just going to say that I would come over and give you a microphone. Right, shall I quickly? And then I'll have more comments on immigration if you want to put your hand up.
I just wanted to know how Nick thought that whether his party therefore needed a minimum wage if he thinks immigrants are driving the economy down, because that's how you stop minimum wages being driven down.
Shall I go?
Minimum wage. Let's comment on minimum wage. Where would you tackle minimum wage?
Well, the minimum wage is set. And then the two big parties that we've had for generations have talked about it's the minimum wage. We should be prosecuting people that aren't paying it. That's the reality. But the reason it's kept low, or at least the job that's offered, is the minimum wage. Why? Because we've got an oversupply of people. If you set up a company tomorrow in Lincoln, I can assure you, you won't be short of getting people to apply for it. There are bags of people applying for every job in Lincolnshire. All right? So if you want to raise that up, you've got to, if you want to set it high, you can do it arbitrary. Of course, the government can set it at £50 an hour if you wanted to. But the reality, if you don't enforce that, then it's a waste of time.
Do you not agree with the comment, because we were doing a hustings down in Spalding a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman came and he'd come from Poland?
Yep.
He walked straight into a job.
Yeah, can I answer that? I don't know whether you knew, but before 2004, nobody ate in this country. Nobody. If you make it sound like after 2004, thank God the Eastern Europeans turned up and worked our fields. Who the hell do you think did it before 2004? We have always had... right, correct. Correct.
Portuguese was the comment in the audience.
Absolutely right, yeah. Hang on, let me answer that. The difference was they went back after they were finished, okay? They came over, they did the work. We have had temporary migration into Lincolnshire for hundreds of years where people come in, worked on the land, and then left again. People in Kent used to have the same situation.
This was of the hops, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yep.
And people actually travelled down and got work in Kent for a certain period of the year, then went home. All we're saying is, don't paint this that somehow we didn't bring the harvest in before 2004, before we opened up the doors to Eastern European migration, unlimited. That was the problem. No one was against us necessarily opening it up, but all the other countries in Europe had the sense to give it time. We got inundated. It was silly. It was a stupid thing to do. Tony Blair should have his backside kicked for doing it.
So you wouldn't agree there's been a net benefit?
No, there is net. Look, overall, if you want to take migration, as that man very rightly said, there are masses of different migration, okay? We have asylum seekers. Yes, you've got to take them, right? We have, of course, people that are economic migrants. That's a different category. And then, so when you look at it, you can't just say immigration, and nobody does.
But what about all the people that leave this country and go and work abroad?
Great. That happens all the time. But do you think it's only just started happening? You make it sound like since we've had unlimited immigration, you're making it sound like all of a sudden British people are leaving. British people have left for hundreds of years. British people have arrived. You make it sound like if we left Europe, you couldn't get a job in France or in Italy. There were people 500 years ago, British people working all over the world, all over Europe. We didn't need the European Union to allow us to travel and work all over Europe.
Let me go to the audience. I want to know how the audience are feeling about this. Nicola?
Yep, I'm right in the middle here, and I'm just going to have a couple. So would you like to say your name?
My name's Jane Loughagan, and my question is that if you are objecting to free movement of people across Europe, would you expect all the British people who've retired to Spain and are costing their health service a lot of money to be ordered back to Britain?
No, they're not. First of all, can I answer that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, look, the migration from the export of our people into Spain was a great benefit to the Spanish. We bought lots of houses, we got their housing market up, we invested a lot of money, we put a lot of money into their... I'm sorry, but these people did not arrive in Spain and expect houses to be built for them. They did not expect jobs to be made for them. They have gone there and added to the net wealth of those countries. Okay, they have not necessarily arrived to be a burden.
Let me throw it around a little bit. Elaine Smith for Tusk. Elaine, comment on that. Just move your microphone up a little bit, Elaine, because you're talking through your neck, which is quite interesting.
I would have said.
It's better than somewhere else, isn't it?
Could be worse.
Well, first of all, I think it's shameful that people are spoken of as commodities. Come over here, do some pea picking, go back. We don't want you anymore. Shocking. We're talking about people.
Yeah,
as I said
time
earlier.
immemorial.
So if people weren't from sort of war-ridden, that we've often caused, countries that were coming here to actually work and get their hands dirty and put money into the economy. If they were coming and buying houses then, that's okay, is it?
No, I
Or
never
is
said
that
that.
just the
You've just
non-doms?
misinterpreted everything that I've just said. Everything.
No, because that's what you were saying.
You just have. I was very clear and explicit in my answers. Very clear and explicit.
Lucy Rigby for Labour, where do you stand on this? Do you think there's been a net benefit to the UK from migration?
I said so, yeah, Melvin, I said so, yeah. I said, immigration has been happening in this country for years and years and years, and yes, there has been a net positive benefit.
It's the numbers.
Back to Nicola in the audience.
So would you like to say your name and your comment, please?
I'm Fabio Tartarini. Just want to make a comment on the comment of Nick Smith. First of all, we need to not forget that there's somebody actually who put the money into the immigrants. So who's paying the minimum wage are not the immigrants, it's people, it's the employer. So first of all, why not having constructive conversation about it and just blaming who actually is to be blamed? Meaning that why not making employers pay a living wage? Why not avoiding people to be exploited? And, there's been some time ago a news saying that there was nobody wanting to make sandwiches in Milton Keynes, simply because it wasn't well paid, it was overexploitation, people didn't have the rights to work. But that was convenient for the company to go and get people from outside. So why don't you try to be more constructive and stop blaming the immigrants?
Let me throw these round a little bit.
No one's blaming the immigrants.
Let me throw it around a little bit.
Bring it on, baby,
Ross,
bring it on.
Ross, just bear with me a second. Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats. Would you like to comment on minimum wage and living wage? How do you see that from the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I think for a start, we need to look at more employers paying the living wage where possible. Obviously, some small and medium businesses do struggle to do that, and we do recognise that. But larger firms should be looking at paying the minimum wage, I think, and we need to be able to make sure we encourage them to do so. I mean, outside of politics, I'm working just like anyone else, and my job is just slightly above the minimum wage, so I know how difficult it is to survive on something like £6.70 an hour or something like that. So it's very difficult in terms of being able to pay your debts, being able to pay for your food, your accommodation and everything like that. So we do need to have a look and make sure that minimum wage does rise, but we also make sure that it doesn't affect people's jobs in the businesses that provide them.
Yes, I've spoken to a number of business leaders who say they run a small business, they wouldn't be able to afford to pay anymore. And you're getting comments coming through as well, Nicola.
Yes, that's right, because we are being broadcast live on BBC Radio Lincolnshire, streamed on the Lincolnite and Lincolnshire Echo websites. Just had something on Twitter with the hashtag Lincoln Debate. Richard on Twitter says, when we talk about immigration, how do we know what the correct level is?
Interesting. Let's go on to another question. We're running out of time quickly on our debate tonight. It's the Big Lincoln Debate on BBC Radio Lincolnshire in partnership with the Lincolnshire Echo and the Lincolnite. I have 5 candidates of the 6 on stage with me at the moment. One candidate, Carl McCartney for the Conservatives, has declined our invitation to take part in the debate, but for details of his policies, you can go to carlmccartney.co.uk. Let's have another question. This one has come from Benjamin Jacob Peck, but Benjamin, I don't believe, can be with us now at the last minute. So, Nicola, you've got Benjamin's question?
Yes, I have, and it's saying, how are they going to be dealing with the ever-growing use of legal highs?
Right. How will you deal with the ever-growing use of legal highs? Of course, there's been a topical debate, certainly here in Lincoln itself. Let's start with Elaine Smith on this one from TUS, Trade Unionists and Socialist Coalition.
Right. Well, I'm somebody who believes that drugs generally should be medicalised and not criminalised. It's the so-called war on drugs hasn't worked. And what we're seeing now is, sadly, young people looking for... There's lots of, I think you must look at the causes as to why young people want to get out of the head on legal substances. You know, it's about looking at probably and inspiring some hope as well. But I do feel, you know, young people being young people, they'll probably look for a thrill. But I do feel that if we could certainly decriminalise cannabis and look at putting heroin and cocaine into the hands of GPs and doctors.
Elaine, we'll come back to you on that in a moment. You've had your minute uninterrupted. Nick Smith for UKIP. How do we deal with the ever-growing use of legal highs?
Well, you know, you are electing an MP. An MP goes to Parliament and they write the law. And at the moment, it seems insane to me that these things are called legal highs. I mean, they're fit for animal use, mainly. I can't understand why we haven't just changed the law and put these products that are down as for animal use only, make them illegal. Why are they called illegal highs? That's why we have 650 MPs, to change the rules, to change the laws, to change the specifications. How difficult is this? Why are we waiting for councillors to do it up here? We've got the Lincoln City Council doing it. It's not their job. They didn't write laws.
Lucy Rigby for Labour, then. How do we deal with this problem of legal highs?
Well, Benjamin's question is a very, very good one. If you talk to the police force, you talk to, residents more generally in the city, they will tell you that, that legal highs are a massive problem. Now, I supported the City Council's bringing in of the banning order on the sale of legal highs, which they've got in the city. I think that was the right decision. It made us the first place in the country to do that. I think that was the right thing to do. But look, we actually, the Labour opposition in Parliament actually tried to amend this government's criminal justice bill to insert a clause that said that would make it far easier for local police authorities to shut down head shops where these things are actually being sold. Now, the government didn't accept that amendment, and they voted it down. And, you know, that brings me to the point, and I've restrained myself from saying it so far, but the reason that Carl McCartney isn't here tonight is because his record is absolutely indefensible. That's why.
We haven't got Benjamin in the audience, so before we go to our final candidates, let's just get another comment on this from the audience, Nicola, if we can,
Yes, I'm
please.
in the audience, and you were cheering and clapping at one pit, I think. What's your name and what's your comment?
Hello, I'm Sarah Freeman. I'd just like to say that I don't smoke and I hardly drink, and I wouldn't take any legal highs or anything like that. But I completely agree with Elaine. Nick, you're wrong. The scientists, and the problem with the legal highs is the scientists are too advanced. As soon as they've put out one formula, they'll change a couple of atoms in the structure and the new formula's done. There's no point in fighting this. We've been fighting it for God knows how many years. It just doesn't work. If we do it legally, if you have shooting galleries like they do on the continent for heroin, you can then tax it. We can stop all the waste of money that's going into the system to try and combat it. It's just not working. If we legalised it, could make a safer environment for everyone.
So legalising would make it better, you think?
What, to put
We'll debate in a second. Let's go to Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents. How would you deal with the problem of legal highs?
Thank you. Well, I believe that we've actually let a whole generation down here. I feel that it's an antiquated system that's ruling the country. I feel that the whole scene needs looking at properly, and the mindset of the government I find very questionable. There's a lot of issues here. They've got to be sorted out, and we've got to get together with those people and sort it out. It's no good going on this mindset that we have of the government now. They're just totally out of touch.
And Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats.
Well, Liberal Democrats have been quite clear that we would look to ban legal highs. But we would, I think, also need to look at things like supplements that you can buy online, because there was the case recently of the young girl who took 8 pills, and I think there was enough to kill her in just 2 of those. So it's a wide-ranging issue, and we need to look into this. But on the drugs side, the Liberal Democrats want to have a different approach, because we all know that the war on drugs isn't working. In terms of possession, I think we should be looking more at education, dealing with it through the health service, rather than criminalising the individual. And we should actually go across and tackle the supply and the gangs who actually give out the drugs, rather than the actual individual who has it themselves. I think that would be a lot better approach, and it would keep a lot of people off the criminal record and stop getting them put in prison, where they can actually get on harder stuff in the future, because prison doesn't work for that, things like that, because they just get more and more addicted.
Let's go to the audience. Let's get some reaction. Nicola?
Yes, I'm just clambering at the minute. What's your name? What's your comment?
Bruce Thompson. I'm chair of the Lincolnshire Methodist District. I think really the fundamental issue is the inequality within society. Research has shown time and time again the less equal a society, the greater the social ills. In every generation there has been... In every generation there has been a way of escaping the environment. We heard earlier on that the Times Rich List has published the richest people in this country. The top 1,000 have wealth totaling 547 billion. On the same week that was announced, Russell Trust Food Banks announced that there were more than 1 million people attended food banks last year. The gap between the rich and the poor is growing day by day.
And more comments from the audience, if we can. Or perhaps open it up to talk a bit more about food banks, if we are able to. Let's just go to more questions.
What's your name, sir, and what's your comment?
Yeah, David Ward. The government has a legal high, obviously, tobacco and cigarettes. That's something which has been ruined because of the plain packaging and display ban, and there's 10 billion lost revenue a year because of that, because you're driving it into bootleggers, car booters, imports, and whatever.
Interesting comment down at the front, Nicola, right down at the very front. Lady with a hand up just down there with the glasses. Talking about legal highs, how we would deal with that.
Sheila Stamp, it all accumulates together. You're talking about immigration, you're talking about infrastructure, you're talking about housing. You need to put the infrastructure in place before you build the housing. Once you've got the housing in place, then you can bring immigration in. Then doctors and nurses will want to come in. The NHS will then survive as well. But unless you put the infrastructure in, why does anybody want to come here? And why are you building all these houses when you haven't got the infrastructure, including the roads, the schools, and the NHS in place? And as for legal highs, they should be banned. I think Ross Pepper needs a slap talking about prisons, not when he said about they could get harder drugs in prison. If he doesn't work in a prison service, I think he needs to talk to people that do. And the gentleman's right about, I work for a tobacco company, £12 million our company pays to the government. Plain packaging, as it's shown in Australia, is going to cause more bootlegs, and they are going to lose revenue through it as
So
well.
it's actually costing jobs and costing money. Thank you for that. We're going to try and get another couple of questions in as well before the end of our debate tonight. The big Lincoln debate, BBC Radio Lincolnshire, in partnership with the Lincolnshire Echo and the Lincolnite. I think our next question, I don't know whether this person's in the audience, Kirsten Whitaker.
No, Melvin, I don't
No?
think that Kirsten is with us, so I'll read it out. Her question is, what would you do to help to let mothers like myself get back to work? I'm a full-time carer, but I'd love to get off benefits and work.
Okay, full-time carer, would like to get off benefits and work. Let's start with Nick Smith from UKIP on this one.
Right, well, obviously, you need jobs first. That's the first thing, like that lady was talking about there. It's no use building houses till you've got jobs. And this lady, if she wants a job, you know, yet again, I say, there's a lot of people going for each job. She's going to struggle to do that. In UKIP, we're talking about applying more money for carers and also more money for, like Sure Start, the similar system to Sure Start. So we can plough more money into it, and that's the only answer that's going to get her out of there and on and into work and off benefits. But it's not going to happen instantly. There's no magic fix for this. You've got to have childcare, yes, and there's a bigger allocation within the UKIP budget for that. But yet again, she's also got to find a job that fits within, eventually, school hours, which is quite tough. And then it's got to pay enough to pay all the bills. And that's going to be an even tougher gig. So it's not easy. Yeah?
Lucy Rigby for Labour, the question again, what would you do to help Kirsten, who, well, she wants to get back to work. She's a full-time carer, but she wants to get off benefits and go to work.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Conservative Party set out the fact that there are going to be £12 billion worth of welfare cuts in the next Parliament, and they won't tell us where they're going to come from. Now, I think the best way to get the benefits bill down is to get people back to work. It's as simple as that. You've got to get people into work. That will get the welfare bill down. And for Kirsten's example, carers aren't paid enough in this country. It's as simple as that. I genuinely believe that. There are people I know, family members actually of mine, who care that they're not paid enough. Now, I think Kirsten, it's a shame she's not here actually, because I'd like to ask her how old her children are, because Labour has a really good offer in terms of childcare, which hopefully we will get to put into action from Friday next week, and that is 25 hours of free childcare for working parents of 3 and 4-year-olds, and also we're going to ensure wraparound care from 8 in the morning until 6 at night, and that's provided through every local primary school. But childcare is a massive issue. We're seeing cost of childcare go up and up and up. In fact, I think in the East Midlands it's gone up by about 30% since 2010. So costs are going up and up and up, and you talk to people and they will tell you that it's often mums, they say they want to go back to work, but they can't because the cost of childcare is so high. We've got to do something about that.
Kirsten's question, she's a full-time carer but wants to get off benefits and go to work. Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independent.
Thank you. Well, this is obviously the million-dollar question, isn't it? I honestly believe that the employers, need to get on board here. And with creches and things like that, I think they have to take responsibility. A woman has every right to go back to work. The women are holding some very, very important jobs in the country. And I believe that something sinister, probably in the way that this funding's being taken away from certain areas, is all a form of control, which I'm totally against. So we have to get this sorted out. We have to get these mums back to work, taking their rightful place.
Let's have a comment from the audience, if we can, on coming off benefits, getting back into work, on that sort of theme.
Chris Robertson, the reason that not enough young mums are back into work is because there is inherent sexism in the system. I mean, women aren't getting jobs across the board, so we need to make sure that we're actually getting more women, and especially young mothers who want to work, back into work, and stop discriminating based on the ground that they've just had a child, because it's totally wrong, and a lot of people will deny it, but we see it every single day, and it's wrong.
Thank you for your comment on that. Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats.
Well, the Liberal Democrats, Lucy mentioned about childcare. We actually want to go further and introduce it to every not just 3 and 4 year olds, but all 2-year-olds as well. So we're actually going further than what the Labour Party wants to do on this issue. We have also introduced shared paternity leave. So you can share the burden between both parents when the child is first born, and we want to extend that so all fathers have the right to spend time with their child when they're first born. On the carers allowance, we want to be able to raise the level at which you stop your allowance, so you actually can earn more before you lose your allowance. And we also want to introduce a carers bonus as well. So carers are sometimes the undervalued part of the NHS service, because obviously they provide the service at home and often undetected by the politicians. And I think anyone who's a carer deserves a big round of applause.
Elaine Smith for the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition.
Yeah, well, I sympathise with, like Lucy said, I'd like to know a bit more about the age of her children and whether who she's actually caring for besides her children. It may be she's got an older or a spouse or someone. She wants to come off benefits, which I'm sure most people would like to come off benefits because, contrary to what people think, they are totally inadequate to live off. We would be asking her why is it because she's not got enough money that she wants to come off benefits? Is it because she feels stigmatised that she's on benefits? Because we know the sort of media and the benefit streets and scroungers. Caring, I was a carer myself. The money that you get for, I was caring for an elderly mum, and the money you get is absolutely abysmal. It really is. We're saving this government so much money, and yet we get paid a pittance for the amount of hours that we put in. So really, I would want to look at and question why she feels that she has to come off benefits.
Elaine, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to have to stop you there. We're going to open it now to the floor to debate this now. We're going to talk about this. We talk about benefits, people wanting to get back into work, but they can't do that. Nicola, in the audience.
Yes, I've just had a tweet from Kelly on Twitter, and if you want to get in touch on Twitter, you can using the hashtag Lincoln Debate. Kelly says it's not about jobs, it's about flexible jobs for mothers. There is a difference. I'm also by this gentleman's side. What's your name? What's your comment?
Ben Hobbs. Unfortunately, it's a simple fact that many small businesses don't hire women because they can't afford to pay them for their maternity leave. They can't afford to pay a worker who's not going to be there for a year. Now, women most certainly deserve those positions, but sometimes it's simply not economically feasible. Would it then be a good idea for local government to fund those small businesses so that they aren't making such a loss and so that women can maintain those jobs? As it's so important that they're there.
Nicola, if you can move around the audience, I'll put some of those points to, first of all, Nick Smith for UKIP. So difficult businesses not wanting to take on women because they're going to have to pay...
Well, if you remember our star MEP, he got himself into real trouble, didn't he, by saying something along these lines. Look, at the end of the day, you've got to understand there is not a bottomless pit of money. Somewhere, there is not a magic money tree. And all the things that you want in life, you can't have. And that's a fact. We're 1.5 trillion in debt. We are overspending by nearly 100 billion every year on our budget that we've got now. Never mind all the things we want to do. So to say that, like your comment, to make the local authorities give extra money to help businesses employ these women, that's great. Where's the money going to come from? We're already spending more than we've got. So you can't just keep saying, let's add to the spending of the public spending. You can't just keep adding. Tonight we've talked so many areas, and all the answers are exactly the same. We need to spend more money. Millions, billions, trillions more money. There's a problem. We're not making trillions, all right? We bring in about 600 billion from taxation. Now, unless you want to all double your taxes for those that work, you cannot have all these wonderful things.
Let me just move this round.
Absolutely.
Helen, just bear
Absolutely.
with me. Helen Powell
Absolutely,
for
I
the
agree.
Lincolnshire Independents. People want to come off benefits, they want to go into work. How would we help them?
Well, I've gone blank for a moment here. Obviously, I did answer that question before, I think, didn't I, with the
You did.
with the mums, or do you mean the parents? I mean, I'm just thinking about the
Here,
gentleman.
the gentleman here saying about women going into
It was
work and not
about-
being given opportunities
Well,
in business.
I thought his question was about the maternity leave, people not wanting to take on women because of the maternity leave. Well, there is a law coming into force, or about to come into force at the moment, or maybe even is in force at the moment, where it can either be the male or the female that takes the maternity leave. So, you know, if the woman wants to have the child and then go back to work and the father bring it up, that's perfectly right, and so it should be. But I think there's always this get-out thing where people are trying to, you know, trick people and not give people work, when in actual fact they could work it out themselves if it was on a fairer level, on a fairer footing.
I want to get some final comments from the audience before we go into our final closing statements. The time has just gone. Nicola.
So if you'd like to say your name and your comment for me, please.
Hello, I'm Caroline Needham. My comment is that I am a carer of 2 children. One's profoundly disabled. I have got back into work, luckily for me, which meant, like you were saying, about it's hard for carers. I actually earn £10 a week too much to claim my carer's allowance now, which is fine, because, you know, I've done that for myself. I'm not claiming any money. You know, that I'm surviving myself. But when you talk about carers, it's difficult if you've got disability involved, because obviously all the cutbacks that are being made to, particularly in Lincolnshire with children with disabilities, you know, the services have been really, really cut. And you know, we perhaps can't afford to have somebody come and look after our children. It's really, really hard.
Nicola, can we just come down to the front here and get some more comments, please, from the audience?
Yes,
and
I've
then we'll go
also
into the
just got
closing
something
statements
on
as well.
Twitter, I believe. Hashtag Lincoln debate is trending at number 8 in the UK on Twitter at the moment, which is an amazing amount of interest, I'm sure you'll agree. If I just come over here and talk to maybe these two, I am keen to talk to women as well as the men. But
Final 2 comments from the audience.
Right, sir.
Hi, thanks. Mike Wilkinson. Surely the way to get people off benefits is to make work pay. And as long as we're paying working tax credits at such high levels as introduced by Gordon Brown, it's discouraging employers from paying enough because they're being topped up by working tax credits. Surely we've got to push and force employers to pay a working wage or more and reduce working tax credits accordingly so that people are not reliant on that and can get in and work.
Final comment from the lady just in front of you, Nicola.
Hello, yes. What's your name and what's your comment?
Hi, I'm Naomi Tweddle. My comment's kind of directed to Nick. He kind of alluded to the fact there wasn't any money. I think if we redistributed the wealth, then actually there'll be quite a lot more money to go around.
Absolutely.
The problem is with money is that it's all at the top and it's not trickling
I agree.
down to the bottom.
I agree. I can't wait for my share.
Right, that is it. We are out of time. We are now going to hear the 5 closing statements from our candidates on our stage here at the LPAC. And we start with Nick Smith for UKIP.
Closing statement. Right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. It's been a lively debate. I'd like to say that some of the things we didn't get in there, that obviously one of the ways you love to spend money, we in the country want to spend much, much more of it. I'm all for it. I think we should redirect some of the funding. If we didn't give 10 billion net to the EU, that's a nice big chunk of money we could be spending on ourselves. Overseas aid is another one. Hey, let me speak. Overseas aid, 9 billion. Now, some of the overseas aid is brilliant, but there's a lot of it goes to building palaces that I don't particularly think we should be doing. There's a lot of it does. A lot of the money is misappropriated. I want to see the money spent in Britain. And I'd like to see us standing alone as an independent country, dealing with the whole of the world, trading with the whole of the world, having a free trade agreement with Europe if they so wish. I'm sure they'll be knocking our door down to speak to us because we import more from them than we export to them.
Nick
so
Smith,
that's the future.
Nick Smith, you're out of time.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Lucy Rigby for Labour, your closing statement.
So over the last 3 years that I've been a candidate, I've done my best to demonstrate to people the kind of representative for our city that I want to be. the kind of representative that I think our city needs, and that is someone who is listening, someone who's engaged, someone who's hardworking, and someone who's fair, someone who's competent. So if you want those qualities in your Member of Parliament, if you want someone who's going to stand up for our city and fight, someone who believes in our local NHS and in promoting our small businesses and in reforming the energy market and in scrapping the bedroom tax, someone who's going to turn up and someone who's going to stand up again and again and again in a better and a fairer and a more prosperous Lincoln, then I want to be your Member of Parliament, and I need your support on Thursday.
Helen Powell for the Lincolnshire Independents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As a Lincolnshire Independent, we all sign up on the very first day to do our very, very best for the people that have voted for us, that we represent in that area. We fight for local people, we fight for local services, and we promote the economy in those areas. We look for everything to promote the best we can possibly do in those areas. There's 3 things in my life that have stood the test of time that my mum's mum taught her and my mum taught me. To always do your best, to do unto others as you would like to be treated, and to think of others before yourself. Thank you.
Ross Pepper for the Liberal Democrats.
Firstly, thank you for coming. And secondly, I want to ask you a question. What sort of Britain do you want in 2020? Do you want a Britain with a world-class health service where you know your loved ones will receive the best care because it has received the funding it needs? Do you want a Britain where a child can dream of what their life wants to be rather than being held back because of the colour of their skin or their background? Do you want a Britain where a young couple can own their own home rather than dream about owning it? Do you want a Britain with a thriving economy, with companies expanding, creating jobs and leading the world in cutting-edge technologies? Would you like a Britain with clean air, green spaces, protecting our natural heritage for generations to come? A Britain where a young gay, bisexual or transgender man or woman can live without fear? This is a Britain that has a strong economy and a fairer society at its heart, allowing opportunity for all. That is the sort of Britain I want. Vote for Liberal Democrat.
And our final closing statement, Elaine Smith for TUS, the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition.
Right, well, I'm going to finish where I started off. Britain's richest people increased their wealth by 28 billion last year. And yet the pro-austerity politicians still insist that there is no money around to maintain services. The ever-widening wealth gap between the 0.1% super rich and the overwhelming majority blows a massive hole in the Tories' much-stated trickle-down theory of economic austerity. Indeed, the situation in Britain is more of a hoovering up theory of inequality. But sadly, austerity will win, whatever mix of parties form the next government. There was an overall party consensus of 515 MPs in favour of a further £30 billion worth of cuts by 2018. So we need to build an opposition to austerity. Living standards, secure jobs on a decent pay, free health, social care and education, control of the banks and utilities, and we have to build for a socialist alternative to this capitalism that's breaking not only the system, but the poorest in our country.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have had our 5 candidates on stage. We had a 6th candidate, which was Carl McCartney for the Conservatives. He declined our invitation to be part of this debate, but will you put your hands together for our candidates on stage this evening? Thank you very much indeed.